Hi grade 8s. This week we're doing calzones. They're a pizza variation. They originate in Italy, and because they're folded over, always with a leavened dough. Leavening means it's raised with yeast, and so they're folded over and enclose pizza style ingredients. A calzone will always have ricotta cheese in the filling, but often other cheeses as well, like parmesan or cheddar. It originated in Naples, but different regions have their own variations. So sometimes the fillings will have the cheese and meats such as salami or ham, and other pizza style ingredients like your Napoli sauce, which is your tomato based sauce, and other variations have just vegetables and the cheeses. This version that we're cooking is a vegetable and cheese one. So to start off with, we need to make the dough. It's a yeast dough like a pizza would normally have. So have your 90 mils of warm to hot water, it can be straight out of the tap, and put in it your yeast and sugar. It's got to have both ingredients, remember. The sugar will help the yeast to work. Give that a beat up with a fork, and then put it in its warm environment. You don't want to add it to the dry ingredients until it's got at least 1 centimetre of the froth. I've got my bowl with hot water in it to act as that warm water bath. If you've got a sunny windowsill, that will do the same job. So then you're going to combine your flour, the bread improver, and remember that's going to strengthen the gluten, and the salt. Once we can see that centimetre of froth on top, then we can add it in with the oil into the dry ingredients. Mix it with a knife because that mixes it cleanly, and that should come together nicely into a dough, and then we'll be ready to knead it until it's smooth and elastic. Be really exact when you're measuring out that 90 mils of water, because if you are under, then you're going to have a dough that's too dry, and if you are over, then it's going to be really sticky. Once it's nearly come together, you can then knead it in the bowl just to form that. Then we're going to knead it on the bench for about 5 minutes to get it nice and smooth and elastic. You've done that method before. You need to test it after a little while to see, is it springy? Remember, when you're kneading, that you might need to put a little bit of flour onto the bench, and then that will absorb what it needs. If it's already quite dry, you won't need to add any extra. This kneading method is stretching out the gluten, so you'll end up with a nice chewy texture. Your recipe requires baker's flour. Baker's flour is strong flour, which means it's higher in gluten or higher in protein. If you're making scones, you would want a soft flour, because remember, you want scones to be more like melt in your mouth, whereas a bread dough, you actually want to be able to chew it. The kneading will help you to get a really fine, even crumb. So when it's feeling nice and smooth, just pop it over into the ball, give it a little press. Does it spring back? If it doesn't, keep kneading it for a bit longer. Once it's kneaded, your recipe says to rest it on a plate covered with a tea towel in the griller cavity. So we'll just get a tea towel. The griller cavity is above the actual oven. Because your oven is preheating, it means that's a nice warm environment. Other times we've sat the ball of dough into a bowl and put it in a water bath that's really nice and warm as well. It doesn't matter. What counts is that it's in a warm environment, and that yeast will continue developing, and you'll end up with a beautiful dough. Next, we need to prepare the filling. Just wipe over the mushrooms with a damp piece of paper towel. You actually don't want to soak them in water, because they actually absorb the water and they'll go mushy. We don't want mushy mushrooms. So all we need to do is to slice the mushrooms, remove any membrane and the core of the capsicum, and finally dice that. Remember, when you're slicing capsicum, to slice from the flesh side through the skin side. If you slice through the skin first, you're much more likely to have the knife slip and get a cut. The spinach just needs to be shredded, so Get that and just wrap it up into a tight ball, and then you can slice it really finely, and that will shred then quite easily. To make the filling, we just want to add in the vegetables. The cheeses, so that's the ricotta and cheddar, a little bit of dried basil, 1/4 teaspoon, and 2 teaspoons of milk. That just brings it together. Give that a good old stir, and that will be ready for when we've got the dough rolled out. Okay, we're ready to check on the dough, and that looks good. You can see that it's started to rise, so we need to give it a re-knead and knock that air out, but it means that it lightens the dough. It helps the rising process. And so just knead that again until it's smooth and cut it in half. And then we want to use a little bit of flour at this point, and we need to roll out each half into the size about of a dinner plate. Now, when you're rolling it out, give it a few rolls in one direction, lift to make sure that it hasn't stuck, and roll it in the next direction. And that way it will gradually ease out into a smoother round shape rather than having weird corners and long sections. So just keep giving it a couple of rolls, turn it slightly, a couple of rolls, and keep turning it. So the big thing is keep checking every few rolls that it hasn't stuck. And you should be able to get it nearly to the size of a dinner plate, a small dinner plate. The key is that it needs to be really thin. Okay, so then we need to divide this filling between the 2 pieces of dough. Put it on the top half that's furthest away from you, and leave about 2 centimetres around the edge that doesn't have the filling, so just spread it out. Then you need to brush the edge with water and fold over to enclose that filling. You can initially just press it together, then you can crimp the edge so that it gives a slightly twisted and pleated effect which really encloses the filling. Place them onto a tray, and then you'll just need to glaze the tops with a little bit of extra milk. That glaze will just help that go a nice golden colour. And put about 4 little slits in the top, and that lets the steam escape. And then they're ready to go in the oven. They've had 15 minutes in the oven, and they're really golden brown all over and look really delicious. So I'll just lift those onto the cake cooler. Traditionally, these would be eaten as street food in Italy, and that's because you could pick it up easily and eat it while you're walking along, and so, you know, they're good vendor food. So I'll just take this one and head off. See you next time.